Welcome to the David Spisak Show. I'm so thankful that you've taken the time to join me. Listen, we typically talk an awful lot within the context of automotive dealerships and the retail auto industry, and I love this industry. You know that. I'm deeply passionate about this industry. You also know that I have a very long history, a lot of experience as an entrepreneur. But what many of you may not know is one of the areas of my life that I'm really proud of is I'm proud that I am one of many, many, many people, most of which far braver and far more impressive than I ever was. But I'm really thankful I had the opportunity to serve my country. In the United States Navy, I was discharged honorably, by the way, in November of 1981. And so anytime I meet anybody in the military, I was on a plane recently, by the way, a Vietnam vet. I mean, I just have such reverence, and people that were in Desert Storm and other aspects of the military, different times, different places. I just have a level of reverence that's just, it's hard to describe, but it's like greatness in front of me. And I don't think ever a great way of doing a good enough job of sharing my level of gratitude. The person I'm going to introduce you to today is Mr. Errol Doebler. And Errol, you're going to know him after today. If you don't know him already, you're going to know him as the founder of Ice Cold Leader. And I shared with Errol that when I received an email from him, I've never had an email address actually strike fear into me. But when you get a message from Errol at Ice Cold Leader, you think, oh, man. But Errol is the founder of Ice Cold Leader. But Errol also happens to be a Navy SEAL. He's a former Navy SEAL. He's a former FBI agent. He has served the country not only honorably, but he has served the country impressively and at the highest level. He's achieved things, he's seen things, he's experienced things that, frankly, I dare say that more than 99, maybe 99.9% of us could not even possibly imagine. So I'm very thankful that you're here, and I know you're going to thoroughly enjoy as much as I do this conversation with Mr. Errol Doebler. Errol, welcome, and thank you for joining.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm going to sign off now, David, because it's all downhill for me from here.
Well,
I appreciate that. I appreciate that introduction. Thanks. And it's, we've been talking about doing this, and we've become good friends. So it's really my pleasure to be here and hopefully add some value to your audience.
I just don't have a single doubt that that's going to happen. And I'm actually thrilled that they're going to have a chance to experience something that I think even in conversation that most of us, how many people out there, are likely to have met a Navy SEAL. I think, forget about being a Navy SEAL, I think even meeting a Navy SEAL is a rarity and is an honor. So thank you again. And I want to start off with this. First of all, what year did you join the service?
I went to the Naval Academy, and I graduated the Naval Academy in 1991. 1986, I went to the Naval Academy Prep School. So technically, you're in the service then, right? You belong to the government. And then got commissioned in 1991. I was on a ship first. I was on the USS Monongahela as a division officer, and then I laterally transferred to the SEAL teams and spent time at SEAL Team 4 and SEAL Team 1. I got injured on deployment, got medically discharged, licked my wounds in the private sector for several years, was in the city on 9/11, and said, okay, I got to get back in this fight. And, I tricked a doctor into medically clearing me, which is a good, fun story. And I applied to the FBI and the CIA, and I just said, whichever one calls me first is where I'm going. And it was the FBI. And then I spent 13 years there, primarily hunting terrorists all over the world, and, had a stint with the 75th Ranger Regiment for combat operations, and then left the FBI just out of a little frustration with the culture, kind of a put up or shut up moment, and then started Ice Cold Leader. So you didn't ask me all those questions, but I thought I'd just go ahead and give you the.
I like it because I think it very clearly, paints a picture and it allows us to kind of see what the trajectory was. I want to rewind the tape a bit if I can, though. I'm always curious about the defining moments in people's lives. And what was the defining moment in your life that caused you, triggered you, if you will, to say, I want to go serve my country, and I want to be in the Navy, and I want to be an officer?
It was not an aha moment. My neighbors were a Naval Academy family. They went to the Navy, like all of them. And, my dad served in the Army for a couple of years. We don't have a great military history in my family, so it wasn't anything like that.
You do now.
Well, we'll see. Right now, my son's young, and he's like, well, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL too. And in my mind, I'm like, look, that's okay for me. You go be an engineer, but I digress. But they brought over a book when I was a kid about the Naval Academy, and I flipped through it. I honestly, I must have been in about 6th grade. And back then, it might even still be the 70s, early 80s. There wasn't anything on the Navy SEALs, really. I mean, there was one paragraph in this book with a picture of a bunch of guys in these stupid short shorts. And there was a very mysterious description about what they did. It's not like it is today. And I just remember thinking, who are these guys? That was it. Fast forward, I'm in high school, and I was an athlete. I played lacrosse was my primary sport. And, I said to my coach, I'm not sure where I'm going. I need help. And he goes, where do you want to go? I don't know what spurred it. I said, the Naval Academy. He goes, all right, we'll get the coaches down here. They recruited me, and I was able to get in. And then when you're there, you become re-exposed to it. And then that's what I was like, I will be a SEAL one day. But it was a weird, I just at that moment said the Naval Academy, and that was it. And I get asked that question a lot, and I hearken it back to that day because I do remember I was fascinated by this picture. What the hell are these guys?
But isn't that crazy, though, Errol? It's like I ask about the defining moment, and of course, your response very honestly and candidly is it wasn't like this light bulb or this epiphany, but yet kind of was. I mean,
it kind of was.
I mean, could you imagine, everybody listening to this? Could you imagine a picture in an academic or a historical book, whatever you want to call it? A picture triggered an image, triggered a thought, it's crazy. And then somehow it's almost like, I'm not a psychologist, but it's almost like that lay dormant, right? Yep. Sitting there. It literally lay dormant. It's almost like it took roots. And then you find yourself in a situation to where your college coach says, hey, where do you want to go? And bam, that picture was laying right there, and it caused you to blurt out for whatever reason. And lo and behold, you end up there in the Naval Academy. And here's the crazy thing. I have to believe that for the vast majority of human beings that would have gone through that exact same situation, Errol, that would have been as far as it went. They made it into Naval Academy, and that's a lot because that's not easy to do. Becoming an officer in the service, that's a lot. That's very lofty. But then you said, I'm not done yet. That picture's still growing roots. At what point in the Naval Academy did you say, this is all great? I mean, the fancy uniform, and I do look great in white polyester and all. with those shiny shoes. I remember those shoes. But I'm looking for something more. I'd like to try being a SEAL. How did that work out? How did that happen?
Yeah, so then, again, you're exposed. They do a pretty good job at the Naval Academy of exposing you to as much as they can. But even then, there wasn't a lot. You know what I mean? So you meet the guys, because everybody starts talking about where do you want to go, what do you want to do? And you just start meeting the guys who want to go to the SEAL teams. And they're good guys, and it starts to really strengthen, because the Naval Academy is very straight-laced, right? So, and I'm not. And So the conformity was a little difficult for me, but I did enjoy it. Yeah, so it's weird. There's a dichotomy going on there. But all the guys who wanted to go SEALs were just like me. Like, hey, you want to go out tonight? Well, you don't go out on Tuesday night at the Naval Academy. You don't go out until Friday night if you're allowed, right? So, sneaking out and having some beers, that's just what we did, and we didn't really care about the consequences because you can't tell us what to do, right? So that was, it just then started like, these are the guys who I want to hang out with. Oh, they all want to go to the SEAL teams too. And it just cemented, what it was about. The special operations, this is the hardest one. Because, Green Berets are great, Delta's great, but what separates the SEALs? The water, right? Did you ever meet a surfer? Everybody's like, the surfers, there's something going on, because that's what the water is. So in my mind, I'm like, well, where else do you go unless not with the greatest and most elite fighting force in the world? So for me, it just didn't become that difficult. Now, what drives somebody to that? I don't know. I'm thankful for it, but that's it.
Can I pause and can I ask you, because it's a good question. If you think back to that great group of guys that you got introduced to, that just sounds like it just further validated or cemented you saying, this is where I want to be. Those are the kind of guys I want to be around. If you had to describe like the hallmarks of somebody who entered the SEAL program and made it through the SEAL program, what would be some of the most significant hallmarks of those people from a characteristic standpoint or personality standpoint?
Yeah, it's not hard. And again, it's a true dichotomy. There's a free spirit in the SEAL teams. We just don't like people laying it on us. Yet, we go through things like SEAL training and BUDS, yet we are drawn to the military. So there's a need to be somewhat of a renegade, yet inside of a system that really is a very disciplined system. They're guys that just want to be given a chance to express themselves, be creative, again, inside that system. It's just somebody telling us that can't be done. We're like, great, now it's time to figure out how to do it. And if we can't do it, our answer will be so detailed and specific because we will have hit it from every single angle that there's no question in anybody's mind it actually can't be done. So I think that free spirit, along with the obvious discipline, are in my opinion, are what really sets apart the SEALs from every other special operations force.
So, Errol, as I said, that the majority of us will never meet necessarily a SEAL. Will certainly have no idea what it's like to be a SEAL, to walk in your shoes. Can you give us a bit of a feeling, of a taste of that first day when you get into SEAL training? First, I got a couple questions. Number one, how many people, what percentage of the people that start on day one walk out and graduate that program, complete that program to actually become a SEAL? So that would be the first question I have. And what does that percentage look like?
It's a 70% attrition rate. So on average, 70% of the people who start will quit the 6-month course, not get kicked out. I've never seen anybody get kicked out. They quit, right?
They just can't. They're like, I'm done.
They just quit. And that's it. Yeah.
And then, Errol, I don't know if I recall you saying at one time when I first originally heard you speak about this, and it was just like some of these things that you shared were just astonishing. Do I remember right? Do I recall that's, I don't know whether it is in principle and practicality or seemingly that everything they do in the first 2, 3, 4 weeks is to get you to quit? Yeah.
No, there's 3 phases to SEAL training, which is called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. First First phase is where Hell Week is, which is the hardest week of the hardest military training. It's like around week 4 or 5. So it's early. Second phase is when they teach you how to dive and do all those combat diving things. Third phase is when they teach you to be land warfare and things like that. Nobody quits after Hell Week. So first phase is literally to make you quit. You don't learn anything about being a SEAL in first phase. They just hammer the crap out of you in such a way that is so emotionally taxing that people quit. And the physical part, every single guy there can do 1 million pull-ups and run 1 million miles and swim 1 million. Everybody there is a stud, right? It is the most elite group of people, physically that you'll get together at that level. But physical part that's a given. That's an easy. It's the mental and emotional. So they're just constantly putting you through things where you're like, I don't know if I can do this forget about another day, another hour.
Were you ever on the edge of darkness where you thought, man, or I'm kind of getting to that point, or did you always have the resolve and the mental toughness to think you could keep throwing it whatever you want, I'm not going anywhere?
Anybody who quit said at one point, I don't know if I can finish this. They may have regrouped for even a week. Every time I heard that person quit. Every time. Anybody who ever said it out loud ended up quitting. So I'm not saying this like, look at how tough I am. Not once, ever did it even cross my mind that I would quit. And I will guarantee you, every guy who made it had the same attitude, because that's the only way. Because they just put you in so many situations where quitting is the only obvious thing to do. So no, I remember at the end of Hell Week, I had shin splints so bad, and they were running us around with the boat on our head. And I remember thinking, my legs, my shins, both of them are going to snap in half. I know it. That's how bad it hurt. But I was like, well, if they snap in half, they snap in half, because I'm not stopping. That's it. So that is the mentality, but that is the mentality that they're trying to find. Because they would say things at Hell Week even. They said, this is not the hardest thing you'll do. Your operations that you go on as a Navy SEAL will be much harder than this. And I remember thinking, that's impossible. And then I became a Navy SEAL. And I was like, wow, they were right.
So it's interesting because you alluded to what you just shared is that for those people that did quit, for everybody listening, number one, it's pretty striking. You always hear about the power of the mind, right? And once you buy into something, it's almost like it's inevitable. So these people actually verbalize. They let it out of their brain. First of all, they let it in their brain,
yep,
that was an option. Then they verbalized it. So it took roots of some point, and they created a situation where there was no other option for them at that point but to quit.
Yep.
For every Navy SEAL like yourself who continued on in the same exact circumstances, it was completely inverted.
Yep.
The only option in your mind was to keep going.
Yep.
The other thought never crossed your mind, and the only thing that you would probably have ever verbalized is, let's keep going. Despite pain, despite hardship, let's go. And could you share a story? I recall you also sharing a story. You can't do all of them, but just to give some people the sense, like when you jumped in the pool and you had to be able to tread water,
yeah.
We've all jumped into a wreck pool.
Yeah.
Like, oh, how hard could that be? We're going to tread water for a minute or something.
Yep.
What was that exercise like?
Yeah. And just before, I just want to put a bow on that whole, you never thought about quitting, because what that does is it allows you to open up your mind to how to get through it. Right? If you take away quitting as the option, then all you have left are what are my possible solutions to get through this. What you're talking about is what they call drown proofing. And what they do is they tie your
They call it what?
drown proofing.
Drown proofing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
So they tie your arms behind your back. They tie your legs together, and they dump you in the pool to complete three things. First is a 50-meter swim tied up. The next is be able to bounce up and down. And I think it was about a 15-foot pole, bounce up and down, right, for about 10 or 15 minutes, which may not seem hard, but it is, because it's all about controlling the air in your lungs. And if you don't do it properly, you can't sink. And then if you realize you haven't done it properly, you're blowing all the air out to get to the bottom. And now you're out of air before you're even at the bottom, right? So there's a whole thing going on. And then the third one is to literally stay on the surface of the water without swimming around. They give you about a 3x3 little area that they'll permit you to move. And just float there for about 10 or 15 minutes. And again, that's an exercise in using your mind to relax and controlling the air in your lungs to keep you afloat so you don't start sinking. And there's no way to practice it except for to do it. So they did. They literally said, here it is. Here's a couple tips. Now, they had instructors in the water. There was practice, but everybody had to get pulled out, right? Initially, because nobody, then they bring you to the side and, you're sitting on the side like this because you're all tied up. And then they'd say, all right, whatever instruction they would give. And then eventually you get to the test that you have to pass. So yeah, it's drown proofing.
Wow. The single most impactful or memorable moment, maybe transformative, during the course of that training, of becoming a SEAL, was there anything that literally was transformative that to this day it's just ingrained in you? It's become part of your DNA. Was there maybe it was a particular leader, maybe it was a particular approach, maybe it's something they shared with you, maybe it's something you experienced?
Yeah. At SEAL training, there absolutely I can remember it. So I had my class started with 200 people. And at the end of Hell Week, which is, I guess, at the end of week 5 or something like that, we were down to 10. It was a literal bevy because they make you ring the bell when you quit. It was like all you ever heard was the bell ringing. It was unbelievable. And I remember when the sun came up Friday morning, because it starts Sunday night and it ends Friday afternoon, like maybe around noon or something. And our weather, we went through it in January, Hell Week. So it was cold in San Diego. It rained all week. I remember Thursday morning, the instructors going, just have them walk around because the weather's doing it for us, right? Somebody else will quit. There's nothing, we don't need to do anything. And that was true. Guys were just quitting. Like, I can't take it anymore. I remember the sun came up and we're like, all right, 6 more hours. Nobody was going to quit at that point. But it's just like, the rain, is it ever going to stop? Are you kidding me? And I remember the sun came up and it was sunlight. And we were like, oh, that's awesome. They ended it early. They were like, you guys are done. Good job. We're going to go. The admiral's there to, congratulate you. About 3/4 of the guys that quit were there to greet us. And the next class behind us. And they were like, they were just going nuts. And that was really fun to see. But I remember thinking, oh my God, if I put my mind to something, I can do anything. There is nothing in this world I can't do if I decide to do it. Now, the key is I have to want to do it, right? But it can't just be anything, because if I don't care, I'm not going to do it. But that was the moment where I no longer had fear, where I said, if I want to do something, I will do it. I don't know how, but that will happen. That was a key moment in my life. I take that with me all the time. I'm an entrepreneur now, right? You know the deal with that. That goes up and down. But in my mind, Oh, no, no. We will be, Ice Cold Leader will be the household name in leadership development in the world, no question. Now, I'm not there, but we will be. How? I'm not sure. We're getting there. But you can't convince me otherwise because I believe it.
So, and I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it begs the question, did you feel that transference of that mindset, of that thought, of that realization as you went into all those ops that turned out to be just as hard as they said it was going to be?
100%. It never mattered. Never mattered to me what the situation was. It never mattered to any of us because it's fine. Let's just make a plan. Everybody's afraid. Good. I'm afraid too. It doesn't mean we weren't afraid because we were. But okay, and what? So let's get to business now. Let's put that aside. Let's get to business, make the plan, dominate. Let's get home. That's it. That's the way. And that is the environment. We talked a little bit about maybe SEALs. You had mentioned having trouble in the private sector, and I hadn't heard that. But that gift can be a problem because not everybody's down with hanging out with somebody who's like, come on, what are we doing? Let's go. Not everybody likes that.
Yeah, and for those that hadn't heard that story, I was sharing with Errol that I had the honor or the pleasure of attending events that supported Navy SEALs. I had no idea that there were some Navy SEALs. I guess I shouldn't be surprised because any of the members of our military that went through extraordinary circumstances and survived, some of those, experienced physical injuries, physical wounds, some of them life-threatening, some of them life-changing. And some of that was also on the emotional side. And I didn't realize that for some SEALs that they dealt with the aftermath. Somehow you just think, man, this is the toughest of the tough. There's nothing penetrating the hearts, minds, and souls of these people. And the other thing I didn't realize is that some of the Navy SEALs were experiencing difficulty in figuring out how to transfer those skills to the private sector. I mean, we've seen, I think there was the movie American Sniper, right, where there's the most highly trained, most lethal sniper we ever had. And that particular gentleman, it was a struggle to get back in there. Now, there's certainly folks that come out of there. You undoubtedly know the story of Admiral Stockdale, spent 7 years in a prison as a prisoner at Vietnam War. And there were many that didn't survive being a prisoner. He did. And so I just think, as you mentioned early on about the test and the fallout rate you had of essentially 90% for your particular class, you don't know until you know. And,
Yep.
One of the things that I think makes it even more impressive, that impresses me more about you than even just the fact that you're a SEAL, and beyond the fact that you took that and said, what other way can I serve in the government? And you did that in the FBI, continuing to do everything you could do to rid this world and the country of terrorists. And then you say, okay, well, at some point I'm going to take this and I'm going to transfer everything I know, everything I've learned and experienced, and I'm going to become an entrepreneur, which to some people, Errol, sounds possibly more terrifying than being a Navy SEAL.
It is.
Sounds crazy, but it is. This is not for the faint of heart. There's a reason why there's just a handful of people as a percentage. It's, man, you got to have guts to go out, and I don't care what business somebody's in. If you're going to start a business, you have to have guts. And tell me about, I would love for you to share with us, as you did that, kind of what were some of those emotions, feelings, or things you recognized or learned when you said, okay, yeah, I've been through that. I've got no question I can handle anything. And then as you start to become an entrepreneur, was there any awakenings, epiphanies that occurred along the way where you said, okay, here I am again through Navy SEAL training of a sort, learning all over again how to get through to the other side?
Yeah. There's a lot. to answer your question, too many to even go through in the time, we're going to be talking. But the first thing was I felt comfortable because when I said, all right, what will I do? And I obviously asked a lot of questions. And leaving the FBI, I served this government for over 20 years, 22 years, I think, between the Navy and the FBI. And because I didn't do 20 years in either branch, I don't get a pension. I walked away from everything. Nothing, right? And that's fine. I'm not complaining about it, but I had zero safety net. Not only that, I had 2 young kids under the age of 5 when I started. I didn't know one of them wasn't even born yet. I had 1 kid, and then now I have 3. So literally without a safety net, supporting a family. But I knew what I had to offer was solid, right? So once I put my thoughts together, organized what it is I would present people, I had no doubt that people would want it and they would benefit from it and they would come back. And that's borne out to be true, right? Now, obviously we make adjustments to what we're doing. But, one of the things I'm most proud of with our business is we boast like an 85 to 90% retention rate, right? People that hire us back that many times, at least once, mostly 2, 3, 4 times. So I know my product is good. But then I realized I didn't know anything about business. And there is a difference, right? I have a great product. I was a bad businessman. And that's when you start to see the gaps. And that was the first time where I started to go, oh boy, I might be in trouble, right? Because I could have the greatest thing in the world. If I can't get it out to anybody, if nobody knows about it, what's the good? And then that's business, right? What is my business? I don't even think my business is leadership consulting. My business is sales and marketing. That's my business. So that was the first time that that first time when your bank account is down to 0 and you don't have anything in the funnel.
Yeah.
That's when you go, because my wife was in the FBI as well. That's where we met. And she stayed in the FBI 3 years after I left and then left to join me. So that first couple of years, we had a little bit of a buffer, right? She had some income coming in and she left to join me. That's it. We were on our own. And so that first time when there's nothing in the hopper, I don't have any good leads, and we've got $50 in the bank account, and we've got 3 young kids. That was when I was like, uh-oh, I don't know what to do. You figure it out, right? You get past it. Wedding wasn't. Now, I would have quit. I would have said, I have no path forward, and I have a family. I will go get a job. I will go start slinging copiers again. That's what I did in between the SEAL team and the FBI. So I'm like, I'll just go do that because I have to feed my family. And my wife was like, can we do it? I'm like, I yes. I just don't know how long. She's like, all right, I'm with you. Let's go. And now we're good, right? So, but that's a long answer to your question. It was the business side, and it still continues to be the business side that I realize I'm an amateur. Now, get me in front of a client, I contend you have no better place to be, right, if you're looking for my service. But I'm now actively reaching out, right, to the David Spisaks of the world, people we meet at Business Bourbon Cigars, like, hey, I need help with my sales. I thought I was good. I'm not. So it's humbling, but it's necessary.
So, Errol, would you mind sharing with everybody exactly Ice Cold Leader, the organization? It's a executive corporate leadership training, coaching program, right? And so as you sit here and you think about what options you have for whether it's an individual, a corporation, a team of people, whatever it might be, what options do they have to work with the Ice Cold Leader as an organization? What exactly is it that you're doing for these organizations? And is there a favorite transformation. I mean, I've always said, as great as it is to experience highs, to achieve things, to realize goals that you have, they pale in comparison in my mind to when I've been able to help other people elevate,
Right.
when I'm able to bring something out of them they didn't know they had.
Yep.
And when I see them maybe a number of years later and I see somebody I hired because they were selling me batteries at a store at Circuit City, which is like Best Buy, and you fast forward and now they're the chief operating officer of one of the most successful auto groups in the country, you sit there and you go, yeah, I knew I saw something in that guy.
Yeah,
And
well-
I'm glad I stuck with that person. Is there a favorite? First of all, let's cut it in two parts. When people work with Ice Cold Leader, why do they work with you? What are they looking for? What kind of options do they have to engage you? And the second one would be, do you have a favorite moment like that?
Yeah. What we do for people is just like you said, right? We are helping people. Now, beauty of what we do and how we do it is what all I've done is put together a problem-solving process. How should you think through things? Because in my view, it's the same way every time. What will I have for dinner tonight? How will I scale my business 10x? Your brain is going through the same process to figure out how to solve a problem, a challenge. All I did was take all my experiences, put them together, and say, here's what you're going to go through, right? You're going to have an emotion. You're going to have an intuitive action on that emotion. If you're aware of that, then you get to decide, is that the right action for the situation? If not, pick one. Here's a plan. And now here's how you reflect. That's it. I teach people that process. The beauty of it is everybody who goes through the program applies the same process and will solve different problems. And that's how I know it's magical, right? So I generally I found our sweet spot is mid-sized companies, right? 50 to 200 people. I don't know, 10 million to 500 million, right? Whatever it is in revenue. And the reason is because they have money to spend, but they don't have unlimited money to spend. So if they're going to invest, they're in, right? They're like, I've got the money, but I'm going to spend this money. I'm going to make sure I'm all in. Whereas, and nothing against the IBMs of the world, but I've worked with them and they have money to just throw away and they check a lot of boxes. And I remember working with them. I'm like, guys, we're doing this wrong. They're like, we're going to give you 100 people. Everybody gets 2 sessions with you. And they paid me a boatload of money for it. I'm like, guys, you're wasting your money. They're not going to get anything out of it. No, that's what we're going to do. I said, fine. I guess I could have kept going that way and taken their money, but I wasn't getting anything out of it, right? Because I wasn't helping anybody. This way, people, I've got a standard 8-week course. However I do, I can come in for a day, whatever it is, you learn this process. And then I just help you to apply it to whatever it is you're going through. Or you're stuck. You don't know what you need, but you know you have some other edge to find. My process will allow you to find what it is and then move forward. And when people
Errol,
get that, yeah.
Is this in a situation where it makes sense? It sounds like one of the scenarios is they're bringing you into their organization.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it's a mid-sized, large organization, are there also other options to where it's not an organization bringing you in, but there's potentially members of an organization or individuals that are going to you for a particular class or course?
Yeah. So, well, not yet. Okay. So a pitch for what we've got coming. But generally speaking, I'm hired by corporations, organizations, companies, whatever. And I usually start at the CEO. The CEO is like, this is magical. This would be good for my next level leaders. I'm like, of course it would be. They go through it. They're like, this is great. Will this work for the line people? Yes, it will, because everybody's got a problem to solve. Mm-hmm. So there's a fee for that, right? And it's it's a fee that the average person generally probably doesn't have. Okay. And that's always bothered me because we have people like, I wish I could go through your course. I can't afford it. And I wish I could give it away for free. Someday I will. But right now we're not in that position. But what we decided to do was say, okay, for this 8-week course, we're going to open it up. Okay. And I'll get my fee because we'll open it up to 10 people, right, to go through together and at an affordable price point. So starting in January, we're going to start advertising it in a couple of weeks. I don't know when this is going to come out, but starting January, we're going to open that up, open those cohorts up. And we hope to really expand our ability to get people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford the course into the course and then really just get the benefit. So we're pretty excited about that.
Well, that's great. And then I know that you also, Errol, have a book. And the book is also Ice Cold Leader.
Yep.
When somebody, how would you summarize let's start here. What was your intention for somebody when you wrote that book? What was your intention when somebody read that book for them to walk away with?
Yep. To walk away from the fact that no matter what situation you're in, there is one way to approach everything. One way. If you approach it this way, your level of stress will go down about what you're confronting because, hey, this is a problem. I've got to solve this thing, whether it's seeing somebody by the coffee machine that I don't like, and I want to do it right. I want to be appropriate. Use this process. Right? I'm brand new. I just got promoted. My team is terrible. What do? Use this process. Guaranteed, if you stick to the principles, you will find what you need right inside it. That's what I wanted for everybody to realize. Anybody can do this, okay? I just happened to say, here's how I came up with it, and it happened to be in some of the world's most dangerous situations. But these were the things I was thinking when I was getting shot at. And I was able to think clearly, and I was able to move through, find where the problem was. That's a skill everybody needs, and I can give it to you. That was initially. So, yeah, go ahead.
Was there any surprises? Oftentimes we endeavor to do something, and we kind of have it all planned out in our brain, all mapped out. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how it's going to go. Here's the timeline. Here's what the result's going to be. And you just described some of that in terms of what your hope, your intention is. When somebody reads that book, what they're going to be able to accomplish when they come out the other side, how they're going to be able to be stronger, more capable, more confident. Have there been any surprises from the time that you made the decision to write the book as you sit back and you turn around, look through the rearview mirror now? Has there been any surprises that you're like, I didn't see that coming?
No, but I mean it in this way because I get very good feedback on the book, right? The only problem is because I'm not as good a businessman as I need to be, not as many people know about it, right? So in my view, I've had countless people come up and say, this is the single greatest book on leadership I've ever read. And the reason is because it's not what they thought it was going to be. Everybody thinks it's going to be me hyping them up, yelling and screaming, motivation. It's not. It starts with emotional awareness. Right? It starts with a true understanding of who you are, what your feelings are, and what you do with them. So I knew that. And I guess I was not surprised, but really, really satisfied at how many people said that to me. This is not what I thought it was going to be. This is really like, thank you for sharing where it came from in these cool stories. But that wasn't it. Like, this is you're right. And that to me was the most rewarding thing because that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to say a housewife who has never worked a day in her life can read this book and be a better housewife. Just like the CEO of a Fortune 50 company can read this book and be a better CEO of a Fortune 50 company. That's what I wanted. I wanted everybody to pick it up and say, I can use this. Holy crap. And that happened. So I expected it, but when it does happen, you're kind of like, okay, that's pretty cool. So, yeah, I guess that's my answer.
It's interesting. You go from a CEO of a Fortune 50 to a housewife, and we live in a day and age that, man, if somebody mentions the word housewife, I think that it causes some people to recoil. I mean, a little bit of PTSD. I mean, I grew up I'm the middle child of a mom that in an abusive relationship with an abusive father that the best thing he ever did was walk out. I mean, everything was hell until that person left. And when he left, my mom, being somebody who was born in the 30s, didn't work, when she was having us kids, but found herself in a situation where she had 5 kids to support, and the person that walked out never paid $1 in alimony, not a dollar. And so she did what mamas do. They take care of their kids, and she
make it happen.
She made it happen. No excuses, no whining, no complaining, no victim talk. She worked multiple jobs during the day. She went to college at night to get a 2-year degree, with the intention of, being able to get somewhat of a better job with a 2-year degree. And what an honorable, noble, powerful position that she served. And anybody who doesn't stay at home full time, has kids, or even if you don't, and you find yourself at home, it's an ass kicking. It's a lot of work. It's hard. It's physical. It's emotional. So I know that when you say that, you're certainly not saying it because I know you. You're not saying it because you're saying, hey, if you're just a house, you're saying, geez, that person who's managing the house is the CEO of that house. And just like you said, you solve issues the same way, no matter what it is. It's so interesting, both experience stress, both may experience anxiety, both are under pressure, both have timelines, both have deadlines, but it's a completely different animal when you're running 10,000 people in a large corporation versus running a household that might be 2 or 5 or 6 people. So that just really rings big with me, knowing what my mom did, for 20 years, 30 years to put us in the position we are.
Yeah, that you picked up on the word housewife, because I write a lot of blogs, right? It's one thing we've done very consistently over the lifespan of Ice Cold Leader. We put a couple out a month, and I wrote one time that said, if you want to be a great leader, act like a mother. And what we'll do, because here's what mothers do. And are you kidding me? Tell me that this isn't applicable everywhere. The number of people I had write me calling me sexist was unbelievable. And I don't respond to that bullshit. I let that go. But one of the other things I learned, right? Everybody says, be your most authentic self. There came a point where I was trying to be everything to everybody in my message. And I finally said, no, people actually like me when they hear my message. Even if they don't like me, they can at least say, but that's who he is. He's not trying to hide it. And so things like saying the word housewife, I know rattles people. Good. Live with it. But tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that is not, right, the model of leadership. A stay-at-home mom is the model of leadership. Forget about the single mom who has to go to work, like you said, and take care of the kids. I don't know why we would look anywhere else for a model of excellence in leadership. So yeah, I say those words like housewife purposely to tweak people, but then to challenge them, like, tell me I'm wrong. Call me a sexist? Like, that doesn't even make sense, right? So that was a few years ago.
Well, that's why I call it out, because you're anything but for anybody who knows you. But you are the guy who is obviously is not going to be apologetic about rattling somebody if it's for the greater good, if it's going to help them, shake them up, wake them up to be able to ultimately get to where they want to go.
Well, and the thing about it is too, I'm very methodical too about how I am myself. right? So I say the word housewife, I'm ready for the 15 responses that some idiot is going to give me, right? So people might think I'm just flying off the handle. I don't really say anything like that without a plan behind it for the worst case scenario.
You know, it's funny. I've been very fortunate in my life. I've had a life that just, I think in some ways certainly defies logic, and it just goes beyond where I could have possibly imagined in many regards. And one of those is I've had this, so many experiences to be around the greatest athletes on the planet. I served on the board of directors for the 49ers for a lot of years for their foundation, to do good work in the community and see what some of these professional athletes were like when the lights weren't on, when they weren't on the field, to really see who they were, not just what they did, but who are you? And you see people like Ronnie Lott, who's a one of one. I mean, what that guy, as tough as he was on the field, boy, the man he is off the field, he is, I don't know that there's a Hall of Fame for that, but that dude should be in that Hall of Fame too. And what he's done to transform people's lives.
I believe it.
And I've had the chance to be around people that are famous musicians and other things, and comedy and other things. And one of the things I've noticed, Errol, with people of that stature is it sounds weird, it sounds cold, it sounds heartless, it sounds inhumane at times to people depending on the circumstances. But the bands or musicians that started out with the pure intention of becoming wealthy, becoming famous, the universe has a funny way of making sure that doesn't happen. And the people that created music because it made them happy, because it was who they were and the message they wanted to send, regardless of whether it was classic rock or whether it was reggae or whether it was rap or whether it was urban or whether it was Motown. Those are the ones that people attracted, they like magnets, because of the authenticity and because of the power of the message. And I say that because of what you just said. Listen, anybody listening, look at social media. People that go onto social media to try to create viral moments doesn't happen. Doesn't matter how much money you spend as a company, it doesn't happen. People that go out on social media with the pure intention of just wanting to get followers, it doesn't happen. It needs to be authentic. So whoever you are, everybody listening to this, we all know somebody in our lives or multiple people in our lives. We don't have to agree with them to respect them. We don't have to agree with them to get better by them. And it's a great message, especially going into this political season. I don't have to agree with anything everybody says. Not all of my friends are Republicans. Not all of my friends are Democrats or independents. But if they are the person that they are authentically, and they're consistent and they stand for something, may not agree with half of it, but I'm going to absolutely respect their position. So I appreciate you saying that. Listen, you mentioned the book. How do people get the book?
You can go to icecoldleader.com, but that'll ultimately send you to Amazon. Right. So I think Amazon, Books A Million, I think barnesandnoble.com. Those are the places, right? But everybody goes to Amazon now to get their stuff. So Ice Cold Leader at Amazon, it'll be right there. You can get it, the hard copy or the audio version. And I
love it. Well, listen, I'm going to give people one other option. You could go to davidspisak.com, and not only will you find this episode, show notes for this episode, information how to get a hold of Errol, whether you want to connect with Errol personally or maybe more importantly for your career and your company, connect with Errol to invite him to connect with you so you could learn more about Ice Cold Leaders. But you could also go on there because I love supporting authors that are creating books, knowledge, and wisdom that can transform people's lives. So I'm going to buy multiple copies of the book. I'm going to buy probably at least a dozen or 2 dozen of the books from Errol, and I like to always give them away to my listeners. So go to the website. You could hit me up there if you want to know more about Errol or find other episodes. Absolutely, please do that. That's most important, to connect with Errol. But if you would like to get a copy of that book, you could hit me up there, or you could DM me on LinkedIn, and I will be more than happy to have a member of my team send you that exact book. And I could tell you, it's going to be, whether you listen to it, which I like listening to it. I like hearing the author. I like the inflections. I like the stories. But regardless of whether you love to read or whether you like to listen, please, whether you go on Amazon yourself or reach out to me, please make that part of your library, because I absolutely am 100% confident it will have positive transformation powers. Errol, last thing I did want to touch on, I'd be remiss, is brain injuries. I know one of the passions that you have, a mission, has to do with brain injuries. And tell me, where did that come from, and what are you doing about it?
I was medically discharged back in 1999 for a series of falls I took while operating in the SEAL teams. I was medically discharged because of all the other things that happened to my body. For 20 years, I was spiraling down, the circle in the drain, with deep depression, thoughts of suicide, behavioral issues. I got diagnosed randomly, ran into a doctor who specialized in traumatic brain injury, asked me to come in, took a scan of my brain, which measures the energy in your brain. And he said, in short, not only should you not be a successful human being, not only should you not have a happy marriage and a healthy family life, you should be destitute. And destitute is the best place you should be with your brain injury. More realistically, you probably should have committed suicide 10 years ago. He said, tell me what you did to survive this. I gave him the process. I said, I think about my emotion every time I walk into a room. I know my intuitive action. I have to decide on the right behavior, and I have to make a plan to get through that situation, because if I don't, I will react in a way that will be destructive. So I got a treatment, intranasal insulin. It's not FDA approved. Intranasal insulin, right? Go upside down. We're going to squirt insulin in your nose. It's going to pass the blood-brain barrier, go to your brain, and put energy to your brain. I literally healed my brain. This was several years ago, with 2 weeks of treatment of intranasal insulin. It has now become my mission. And then the guys who had the patent on it found me, because I wrote about it. And they said, they asked me a bunch of questions. I didn't know who they were. I go, who are you guys? What do you want? They're like, we did the patent. You're the first human being who we know of who's had this treatment. We need to know. And so I told you that. They're like, we knew it. And I said, where you guys been? Like, why is this taking so long? I'm like, this will literally change the world. Literally. Like, housewife who gets into a car accident, gets a CT scan, and the doctor says, you're fine. And they're not fine. And now they're losing their mind at home. Imagine this treatment for them, right? So they said, we had the patent 15 years ago. We sold it to Big Pharma. They sat on it because it's a cure. And now we have to redo it. And now I am actively helping them raise money so they can move into phase 2 of the study, because it is a cure. Not only that, what's next? Okay. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, those are all brain degenerative diseases that this will fix. What else? I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict, and after 20 years of abusing my brain, I'm clean. But I am so damaged. Guess what? Intranasal insulin to start repairing those parts of your brain so your recovery will hold, right? So that's when you talk
Have
about.
they had any?
Why.
I mean, obviously, you're walking, talking testimonial for this, and just like you're a walking, talking testimonial of the process that you teach people by the very nature of the fact that you went through combat, were shot at, and you're sitting here. So it certainly worked for you. Those types of things, I mean, my wife is a hospital-based physician, critical care, and those types of things, they're arduous. They take a ton of money, and they take, double-blind trials, and they take all kinds of research and, verification and FDA hurdles and all of that. Have they been able to accomplish or be able to pursue and see the outcomes of hospital-based research?
So I'm not familiar with what they're doing in the research, right? So that's like that. I don't know. What I do know is they finished phase 1 and they're moving into phase 2. Again, the details around that, I don't know. I would be blathering and I'd get it wrong. All I care about is to get the funding to move in, because what they say is, look, we could not get the funding and have it sit there, but there's a momentum thing with the FDA that needs to happen, right? If they keep rolling, FDA starts approving, you're at the top of the list. Oh, you're funded, you're doing the study. Okay, let's go. Let's get this thing done. So I don't know the details of what the studies look like. I know that we're raising money to make sure they're getting to phase 2. They need $2 million. I've literally sat, David, I've had coffee with billionaires, somebody who could reach into their pocket, pick out the lid, and give me $2 billion. Ask them to help, and they don't. And you know why? Because they don't believe it. They don't believe it's that easy. And I'm like, I will get you in front of the researchers. Don't believe me, right? And it's weird.
I think that it, in one sense, it is, Errol, but in another sense, anybody who's been on this earth for 40, 50 plus years, certainly, we've certainly have experienced in our lifetime, big pharma, in some form or fashion, and we've seen the processes. We've heard of what it takes to get through clinical trials. We've heard of, at times, hundreds of millions of dollars to get through multiple phases of clinical trials and validation. I just wasn't too long ago. It was a company that I'm not going to say who it is, but it raised an incredible amount of money, buckets and buckets and buckets of money. And all of a sudden, after they seemingly were on the path to being fine and, was going to be undoubtedly this insanely successful financial outcome for them and their investors, it all came to a crashing halt, because when they went into some additional research that was done, like I said, these double-blind type of studies, and that were done at research hospitals, because, as you know, you can't have the company sponsor the research that says, that's the kind of stuff you see at GNC, that horseshit that says, oh, take this, you're going to be taller, better looking, lose weight, become younger, Benjamin Buttons and all that. And that's why that stuff is a lot of fluff. You have to pass just a much higher bar there, as you know. Yep. And man, that takes money, and boy, oh boy, something tells me there's some politics along the way too, right? Because especially if it's going to be potentially a threat to some other big pharma company, right? And so it's a path. I just would like to focus on the fact that you're standing here. You're a fully functioning, happy, genuine, authentic human that's out there raising a family with your wonderful wife and taking care of your kids and being a positive contribution to the community. On top of everything you've done for 22 years in serving your country. So it's certainly, like I said, it's a testimony to what these folks have done in their passion to bring something to the surface. So I just say, I hope that goes well. I hope they're able to raise the funding that they need to be able to further their test, even if it doesn't get to the market, honestly. But even if it continues to help another 1, 2, 3, 4, 30 people and change their lives, it would be really, really remarkable. So
you mark my words, David.
Keep us up to date.
When I said to you, but there's something I feel like I can do. There's no stopping. This will be the treatment around the world that saves lives for people with traumatic brain injury. Over my dead body, it won't be. So I will keep you posted. If anybody listening has questions, wants to donate, you know how to get in touch with me. I'll give you all the information, push you in touch with the researchers. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. And on that note, and obviously and I'm sure everybody wishes you well, because I just saw the story about Brett Favre, and the fact that he revealed he has Parkinson's. Go figure, you get hit in the head, get 100 concussions. What's the worst that could happen?
Yep.
I mean, these things are everywhere, more than any of us have, I'm sure, have any idea that exists. So I certainly hope that happens, and we're pulling for you there. I want to thank you. Thank you for service to your country. As a Navy SEAL, thank you for your service to their country as an FBI agent fighting terrorism. And thank you, and I really appreciate what your intentions are to help transform individuals and companies with your leadership training. So I'm wishing you all the best. Anybody who wants to find out more, I believe the website was icecoldleader.com, and you could reach out, as I said, directly through the website. You could certainly find Errol on LinkedIn. You could find him by going to www.davidspisak.com. For everybody who took the time to listen, thank you. I can't thank you enough. Hope you found this as informative and fascinating and valuable as I have. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the David Spisak Show. Thanks so much.